The Prime Minister's EU pull-out plans signed off by her cabinet despite widespread dissent.
The collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead.
Critics say her Brexit plan could tie the UK to the EU for years without giving Parliament the ability to make its own trade deals. The EU's chief negotiator called the plan a decisive, crucial step and said it would avoid all problems with the Northern Ireland border.
You are not delivering the Brexit people voted for, and today you will lose the support of many Conservative MPs and millions of voters across the country.
But now the complex task of getting it through the Commons begins. Also ahead this hour, the Rohingya refugees dreading being sent back to Myanmar after fleeing for their lives. Plus salutes and celebrations as Prince Charles turns 70. And we're going to be taking a look at the stories making the front pages around the world today. Good morning, you're watching Sky World News. Now, the British Prime Minister has signalled a significant step on the journey towards Brexit. After 5 hours of talks, Theresa May emerged from 10 Downing Street to announce that the Cabinet will back the draft plan agreed with the European Union. And she delivered a strident warning to her opponents that their choice is now between this deal, no deal, or no Brexit at all. Well, coming up, we're going to be going through the detail of the 585-page agreement, including what it means for the Northern Irish border. But first, our political editor, Faisal Islam, has this morning's main report and a warning. It does contain some flash photography.
An agreement reached after a marathon 5-hour special cabinet meeting. The Prime Minister emerged to tell the waiting press corps that the UK government says yes to the draft withdrawal agreement negotiated by officials.
The Cabinet has just had a long, detailed and impassioned debate on the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration on our future relationship with the European Union. I firmly believe that the draft withdrawal agreement was the best that could be negotiated, and it was for the Cabinet to decide whether to move on in the talks. The choices before us were difficult, particularly in relation to the Northern Ireland backstop. But the collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead.
This is a Prime Minister betting it all on this deal. The country's future, Brexit's future, and her own too.
I believe that what I owe to this country is to take decisions that are in the national interest. And I firmly believe, with my head and my heart, that this is a decision which is in the best interests of our entire United Kingdom.
The deal will see a backstop of a single customs territory for the UK and the EU, also forming the baseline for the future trade partnership. In addition, Sky News understands the Cabinet was given clear legal guidance that there would be no unilateral way of withdrawing from this arrangement. This is what caused a fractious meeting to split, and as weary Cabinet loyalists poured out in front of the Downing Street cameras, it emerged that the verdict was far from unanimous, with strong opposition registered by several ministers, Michael Gove the only Leave campaigner to back the PM's deal.
Are you going to get through Parliament?
Of course I am.
That Julian Smith, the Chief Whip, after an impassioned debate in Cabinet, a debate that has led to the withdrawal text being agreed by the Cabinet, but at what cost to the Prime Minister and her party.
Next on his feet in this delayed choreography, EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier.
In the backstop scenario, we agreed to create a EU-UK single customs territory. Northern Ireland will therefore remain in this same customs territory as the rest of the UK border.
That should clear the way for a special deal summit next Sunday. But having won a majority verdict in Cabinet, the PM may now have to focus on her fractious backbenchers. Her appearance at Prime Minister's questions before her Cabinet marathon showed just how difficult the parliamentary maths will be. She got a bashing from her own side.
You are not delivering the Brexit people voted for, and today you will lose the support of many Conservative MPs and millions of voters across the country.
And no help from the opposition either.
So if the Prime Minister cannot get this agreement through Parliament, and I very much doubt she can, then she's either got to go back to the EU and say we're going to have to negotiate something more in keeping with the wishes of MPs on behalf of the electorate, or resign and have a general election so that people of this country can decide who they want to be in government.
And as the Cabinet met, so did the 1922 Committee of Backbenchers, reacting to news of elements of the withdrawal agreement with more questions and letters of confidence in the Prime Minister herself.
I have consistently said that we don't want to change the Prime Minister, that we want to change the policy of the Prime Minister. However, there comes a point where if the Prime Minister is insistent that she will not change the policy, then the only way to change the policy is to change the personnel.
And the party upon whose MPs the PM relies, the DUP, deeply unhappy too.
Certainly we will not be voting for something that will break up the United Kingdom. We've always been very clear about that. We understand that there are many people across the House who share our view, whether in Scotland or indeed in England.
The PM says this is in the national interest. Now she has to try to unite a split country behind this deal, with a split party and a split cabinet too. Faisal Islam, Sky News.
Well, we have been hearing about and talking about the details of Brexit for months, and now those draft proposals have been published. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, has been examining all 585 pages and has the details now.
Well, it is a huge document, as you say, 585 pages, but also an incredibly important document for the future relationship of the UK with the EU and on our future rules and regulations. One of the key things we've been talking about is set out here in this joint statement about the draft withdrawal agreement containing this protocol that the Northern Ireland would have a legally operative backstop, including a single customs territory between the European Union and the United Kingdom. Now, it says that neither the EU or the UK wants this to enter into force, but if it does, what does it mean? Well, if we go into the main document, we can see that it actually means different rules and regulations for Northern Ireland in certain areas to the rest of the United Kingdom. So there would be more EU law in agriculture and the environment, the electricity market, state aid, and also VAT and excise. That would be regulated differently in Northern Ireland to the rest of the United Kingdom. How would those regulations be applied? Well, I think this statement will alarm some people, particularly the Brexiteers. The union representatives shall have the right to be present during and receive, upon request, all relevant information relating to any activities of the United Kingdom authorities related to the implication and applications of provisions under union law made available by this protocol. So the United Kingdom shall facilitate the presence of union representatives and provide them with information requested. And if they want certain measures put in place, then the UK authorities are obliged to put those measures into place. Now, how easy is it to leave? This is the big question. If we go into this backstop arrangement, if at any time under the end of the transition period, the Union or the United Kingdom considers that the protocol isn't working, they have to basically set out their reasons and notify the joint committee. Now, what it says then is that, I think this is really the key bit, that the Union and the United Kingdom decide jointly within the joint committee that the protocol in whole or part is no longer necessary to achieve its objectives. So there is no unilateral way for the United Kingdom to get out of the backstop. Now, that makes it harder to leave this agreement than it does to leave the EU. If you imagine when you want to leave the EU, you've at least got Article 50, which you can actually apply that unilaterally. Here, you have to get agreement. One of the other things I think that Brexiteers won't like is this paragraph here about judgments and orders of the European Court of Justice, which basically says that if they're handed down before the end of the transition period, they have a binding force in their entirety on the United Kingdom. Now, let's just go back to that original joint statement to end. And if we look at the bottom of it here, I think this is another key issue. On the issue of trade and goods, negotiations have agreed in principle for a comprehensive arrangements creating a free trade area and combining deep regulatory and customs cooperation, building on the single customs territory provided for in the withdrawal agreement. But both sides, whilst they wish for this trading relationship to be as close as possible, it talks about here balancing the rights and obligations of the integrity of the European single market and customs union with the development of the United Kingdom's independent trade policy. And that will be subject of the future trade relationships. That key issue about our future trading relationship with the EU has not been decided. So whilst all these other things have been discussed and decided and will be signed up and sealed in this document agreement, the key thing that the UK is trying to negotiate with Europe actually has not yet been decided in this document.
So Theresa May has an enormous job ahead, and she's not helped by the arithmetic in Parliament. Here's Sky's political correspondent Lewis Goodall to explain.
Beyond the Cabinet, beyond Downing Street, it will be here on the green benches where Theresa May's fate, the country's fate, will be decided. And for once, the neat division of government and opposition will mean nothing. It's all about the factions within them.
Prime Minister!
If the Prime Minister is deserted on the floor of the House of Commons by the DUP, 30 or so hardline Brexit Tories, a clutch of Scottish Tories and hardline Remainers all voting against the deal, then the Prime Minister only has 270 or so votes in the bag, 47 short, so she's relying on Labour. There is a small group of Labour MPs who represent Leave voting constituencies. They might support the government. There are around 15 of them, so let's add those in. That takes her up to 286. There aren't many. If we're optimistic, the government could maybe also bring the DUP back. Let's assume they can. That's 10. That takes her up to 296. She's still 22 short. Add in the Tory Remainers. Turn out they're persuadable. She's still 12 short. Let's see if she can get the Scottish Tories back on side as well. She takes up to 312. She's still 6 short. It all comes down to minimising that Tory rebellion or sweet-talking a serious number of Labour MPs. Either way, the parliamentary way through all this is very difficult to see. So what about a fresh referendum or election? It's traditionally what we do when there's an impasse in the Commons, but we've done both recently and neither proved decisive. It might not again. And besides, the problem now is very pressing.
If Parliament is deadlocked, presumably we would have an election. The problem with that is time is running short too, because if Britain has an election, that'll take a couple of months. The result may not be that different.
The Commons might even vote on the deal twice. We might leave with no deal, or we could have a change of Prime Minister, which could even happen before the vote if Tory MPs rebel. If that did happen, though, without a new election, it wouldn't change the numbers.
There comes a point where if the Prime Minister is insistent that she will not change the policy, then the only way to change the policy is to change the personnel.
This is the ultimate test for Theresa May, a test of confidence, confidence of the House of Commons, of the country. The biggest parliamentary showdown since Jim Callaghan's government fell by a single vote in 1979.